Hey, this is Joey Barzatil, and welcome to the Secret Men's Business podcast, a special edition. Today, we're going to be talking openly to one of my mentors, heroes, good friends, who is going to be able to talk about an issue that I think that we dodge, and that is talking about male masculinity and talking about what's really going on now. So on today's show, we're going to be speaking to Greg. How are you, my friend?
Mate, I'm just off. I just want to talk to you about anything, really.
I know. That's why you're the person I have to speak to, because I know that you've got no filter. How have you been? How has life been since the last episode that we did with you?
Yeah, really good. Obviously, we're back in lockdown here in Victoria again, but look, life's just, with 3 kids under 6, it revolves around them pretty much, and so it's good. The joys of seeing children are just fantastic because they live life with so much joy and freedom and compassion. And there's nothing. I mean, I was saying this to someone. We're going on a tangent here.
No, this is the show. It's called the Greg Tangent.
I was saying because we've and again, this is. I'll say this with the precursor that. Well, I say please don't take what I'm saying is wrong, but we've actually moved one of our children into an ELC at a private school, and it's got a lot of ethnic groups there, so Asians, Indians, Chinese, Australians, but it's such a social economic mix of a soup.
Is it very academic?
Yeah, it is. You know what? No racism there. They all play together. They don't care.
Because it's not about race, is it? It's about academic success. So they're all competing. What they're doing. It's in a way good, isn't it, that they can learn just to be people and just compete who gets the best score.
Yes, exactly, at the age of 4. Yeah, but it's just good to see that. 4 years old. But it's just good to see, young children with there's no line of, well, you're Asian and you're Indian and you're Anglo and you're American and you're, Sri Lankan. There is nothing. The kids don't see that. The kids just see another boy, another girl, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. It's amazing.
I know that you may not have experienced there a long time, but do you notice that there is other substitutes for that? Like, do they become academically exhausted because that's their focus rather than noticing skin color?
Not really. I mean, it's a quite diverse thing as well too. So it's actually been really good for our kids to go there because we've found for us it works. Okay. And I know I can't say that for everybody else it will, but for us and our kids and the way that we want to bring our children up, it's just worked for us. So yeah.
So let's use that as a segue. Let's use that as a segue into because you're able to bring up a thing that's happening with I guess racism and all that. So today I did want to talk about the changing face of masculinity. And again, you were the first person that came to mind because you and I sort of talked about this on your podcast, but we didn't really get into it. I wanted to talk to someone else as a new person, and that person just couldn't do it. And I thought, what do I do? Bang, there you are. You've got to go to the leader, the expert. So let's start off with you telling the audience what you feel is the definition of masculinity in this landscape. I know it's a big question. and I want everyone to know listening, right, this is just our opinions, okay? We're not looking to create conflict or to create debate. This is just an important conversation to have. And talking about it openly is the way to do it. We don't want to go, oh, you can't say that, you can't say this, because that blocks us. So what Greg is going to say is really his opinion. And I wanted this to be the beginning of a conversation, and hopefully he'll encourage everyone else to start doing that themselves. And he is, he's clairvoyant, so he knows the answer. So what do you think it is for you?
I think we have to go sort of back a step and see that, and this is a story from my own life, is that we weren't taught values. We weren't taught what it was to be a man. We sort of just went through life and you were taught, success was this, and it was how many women or men you betted, that, how masculine you were. It was about counting numbers. it was really about, I want to, for me, it was more around, and when we get this thing about toxic masculinity, it's actually masculinity in itself is not toxic. It's toxic humans
Mm, I agree. And that word
and toxic
toxic has really become
behaviors.
a big divider, hasn't it? Like everyone goes, "Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sick of the word toxic," but really, the word toxic masculinity is referring to the person and how they see it.
correct.
It's not about
It just
being
because a male's
masculine.
done it. No,
Yeah.
it's got nothing to do with it. And this is why I have a discussion with a lot of people. Is it's nothing to do with the masculinity. Yeah, a male's done this, but a female can do it as well too.
Yeah.
And we don't say it's toxic, or some people do say it's toxic feminism, but it's actually a toxic human behavior. And I want to separate that stuff out because masculinity in its true form for me is really about providing a space and protection and being the rock for your family and your friends, to be able to be emotionally available, to, again, like I was saying, hold space, to be the leader, to help people grow, to share vulnerabilities and stories, and to pass down wisdom and knowledge to the younger generation, and to be guardians of them, and to make mistakes and to bugger up stuff, but have a very strong moral compass as well too, about what's right and what's wrong. Okay. And
That's it, everyone. The show's over. Thanks for listening.
there we go.
Yeah, can I just add something to what you said earlier? Do you also think that the reason why we were taught what masculinity wasn't? You know, like don't cry and don't do this. So
Yeah.
but you're right. Like no one actually said, okay, so don't do this, but this is, no one really told us what it was. For me anyway, I felt like I was told what it wasn't.
Yeah.
So, you know,
And now we
I
go
was
the other,
told not to do certain things that wasn't masculine.
but now we're going the other way, where we had a group of year 12 students,
Mm,
in a Victorian state school, told all the white males were told to stand up and apologise for being white, male, and privileged.
mm,
And we've gone so far the other way that men now are just afraid to actually identify with masculinity, because what we're being told now is it's all wrong, it's all toxic. It's anytime you're showing your kind of masculinity, it's actually, oh, you can't do that, that's a bad behavior. And we've gone too far the other way,
mm.
trying to adjust with stuff, right? So there needs to be some real conversations around what really does it mean to be a male, and that will, there's no real one answer. It will be a bit of a grey area in a range, but that range is pretty much spot on every single time, whether
Yeah.
you're blue, purple, green, yellow, pink, or grey.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also think that if you look historically, we always have to break something before we can fix it. And so for
Yeah,
females, right, who probably were caught up in the male masculinity world,
yeah,
they have to have their voice. And once they feel like they've said what they have to say, then we can look at it like subjectively. Do you know what
yeah.
I mean? So you brought up privilege. So how do you actually see the price we've had to pay for privilege? You know, the whole thing with whites privilege, the whole thing with us not understanding what females have to go through, and men don't even recognizing that that's a privilege. Is there a price that we've paid for that?
There is, but men can come out back with compassion, and they can really come back with compassion and understand where that person's been and under. But the thing is that, again, you shouldn't apologise for where you've been born into. It wasn't my fault. I was born into here.
Mm,
That was just where I ended up. Now, I will use whatever's available to me to progress my life. But yes, I've been very fortunate being in a middle class, white, Anglo-Saxon area, that I've absolutely got privileges over other people that have other, different things to me. Now, should I apologise for that? No, because for me, I treat everyone respectfully and equally, and I will help those people out, and help them try and break down some of those walls where possible. I mean, and you and I do this in our coaching programs every single day,
yeah.
right? And so where it gets a bit funny is that, should I be apologising for this? And should I be ashamed of being in this white privilege? And I think Joe Rogan said something the other day that in 50 years' time, you just be white and male, you're going to be apologising for everything.
I
Right?
saw that actually. I saw that same thing. So can you just confirm, right? I understand what you just said, but can you confirm where do you think who's asked us to apologize? Like when you feel like I don't need to apologize for that, are we talking about women? Are we talking about society?
Yeah.
Like
So,
where is this? Are we talking about the Me Too movement? What's made us have to go? I'm not going to apologize for where I was.
yeah, and this is the misconception with things, because 90% of the population don't act this way, and I think it's a lot of a media hype and media build up, and a certain people running certain agendas to do, which is great. It's awakening the cause. It's awakening that people have been suppressed for long, and it's actually allowing us to have compassion with them to break, like I said, break down some things. But the majority of people I speak to actually are very inclusive and very supportive. And I don't know any one of my friends who didn't vote for gay marriage. Okay,
Yeah.
the whole thing is that. So there's this thing where I would say 9 out of 10 people I know are very open with the fact is, there was stuff that happened. There's been, completely female species have been suppressed, and, they've, been treated like objects, and they didn't get to vote until 1960 odd, something like that, or whenever. Not remember what it was. And, even the old banking system where, a female couldn't take out a loan by herself. Now, we can go backwards in time forever. But at what stage do you sort of say, well, we need to move forward? We need to actually move forward with this, and actually not looking backwards in time and going, well, this happened 50 years ago. And, you and I were working with clients, you and I know there's no solution in the past.
Yeah. I guess,
We
what they're doing by the past, I think the past is sometimes brought up so they can actually show because I was going to ask you, what do you feel is the reason why some men don't get what you just said, and they don't want to go back and actually acknowledge the past? They're stuck, and you and I both know that there are some men that are stuck, even though we know most people are open.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how do you talk to those men about the price that they're paying for being so privileged and being so entitled?
You can't. I find sometimes I can tell you the ocean's green to Macau's come home, but if you think it's blue, we're never going to meet. And for me, it's just the thing is that there is a certain part of the population we're never going to convince. The fact
you don't think that there's going to be a conversion eventually?
Not for everybody.
Okay, that's real. That's honest. I think that I spoke to someone once about the drug culture, and I asked him, I said, what's the solution? And he goes, adapting to it being reality. So I think that that's the same thing with what you're saying, is that I don't think we're ever going to find a space, even though people hope that there's going to be this nirvana, we're never going to find a space where everyone agrees.
Correct. And that's
thank you so much. No one's ever said that out loud before.
But I think that comes with the understanding of everyone's got a difference of opinion, and this is where people in our position can come from empathy as well too, and just go, that person has that viewpoint, and look at the destruction that's happening from that area, and look what's happening. But again, when they're ready to evolve past that, they'll be ready. We can't push that agenda.
Okay.
So
maybe the next question might open that up a little bit. So,
all right,
when we talk about hierarchy, right, in manhood, right, and you brought up, we think about being the way we grew up and the way that we experience things. We also have to incorporate our personalities. So, both of us know that when we were younger, we understood that who was strong and who was weak, and we took advantage of that, right? So how does hierarchy influence the way that we see ourselves as men? And how do we change hierarchy, you think? So there's more equality rather than not looking at people equally.
Well, I think, and this is going against the grain, I think hierarchy is vitally important in mentoring men, because I think that the older generation and the wisdom that they've learnt in their lives is a huge, huge thing to teach younger generation, especially teenagers, having elderly people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 60s. Look, I'm nearly 50, right? Elderly people.
I'm nearly 60, so shut up.
Shut up, Greg. Mentoring, and that's what I see as a hierarchy. And I see it again, it's a perception thing, not a I'm better than you or all that kind of stuff. I actually see that as a hierarchy sort of framework that the older generation can mentor and teach our younger generation through the power of story to be able to share those experiences. And I spent a week up in Byron Bay with a guy named Arne Rubinstein doing a rites of passage with just 35 amazing people, so Aboriginal elders, group of Aboriginal boys, men, Sudanese boys, and the power that was in that 35 people, and the transformation that happened in there, and the stories that happened from the elder generation was mind blowing, and we don't do enough of it. Yeah. We've lost that in our Western culture about the rites of passage and tribalism, and having the hierarchy of the elders and the respect from the elders. And I see kids these days have zero respect for authority, zero respect for any elders, and that because, and I'm going to say this out loud, bad parenting. It's plain and simple.
Well, I really like the way that you flipped it. And actually, again, this is why you are the perfect person for this. It's like, I wrote that question looking at it a totally different way, and in 1 second you flipped it, right? So the thing is that we have problems in the world that create hierarchy of good and bad because we've avoided and we've let go of the hierarchy of role play, of the mentoring thing, which I didn't think of before. So is it possible for us to bring that back?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And it's starting to come back. Especially in a lot of the men's stuff, is it's starting to really break through where you're actually seeing these different groups starting to form where they're actually teaching through that method of rites of passage. And I've got countless stories of people, young kids transforming their lives purely because they've been able to experience a rite of passage in that framework.
And I think that kids are wanting it, aren't they?
Oh, they need it desperately. That's what I said. There's such a lack of parenting these days, and the parents have got,
you're actually saying something really controversial, so I'm going to give that to you. So why are parents lacking the whole ideology of learning or teaching their kids, especially their sons, about all of this hierarchy thing? Why? Is it lazy? Is it busy?
Yeah, because they haven't been parented very well themselves, first of all. They have basic, if not no idea about human psychology in the slightest idea. They're both working jobs. They're both looking at success driven from what they can get. They look at happiness from what things can they buy or achieve or strive towards. They don't realise that happiness is an internal structure and an internal validation. We've been taught all these things about success is what you do externally, and it's just a recipe for disaster. You've got adults on their phone all day, not engaging with their kids. You've got their kids on their phone, not engaging with their parents. How many times do you go to dinner and you see the whole family on their phone? They're not even engaging. And I've got when I help people out, I've got some things like some questions that they ask their kids, and like they're basic questions like, "How was your day?"
And they can't answer.
It's like my dad asked me how my day was. It's so foreign to me. It's like, fuck. Like, seriously.
Yeah. Like, so, I mean, I'm a little bit, I believe you, but I'm a little bit dubious that it can come back. Because I feel like it's got so saturated. There needs to be.
It's a long road.
I know that, but like, what do you think we need to snap people into seeing it? Like, I know this conversation's important. How are we going to get parents? Sorry?
Has to break. You got to break things first.
Yeah.
Has to be a complete failure of society.
Okay. Yeah.
This is why you're seeing all the shit go on, is because it's like the dark night of the soul. Just before the dawn is the darkest. And you need all this shit to break. So you need all this stuff. And that was, I believe COVID was a blessing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like it really, really just showed how disconnected people were from their families in a massive way. Yeah. And now people are going, I ain't going back to travel 4 hours a day to get to a job I just don't really want. I've got to spend some time with my kids. And the kids are so engaged. Like I spent this weekend, again, in lockdown. What can we do? So I built 2 frozen castles out of Lego with my kids.
I love it. I love lockdown too. I reckon that I do more in lockdown than I do in the whole of the year. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I've created all this stuff online more. Like it just gives you a clear space. Yeah, I mean, so let's take that now. I want to move to the patriarchal role. Like, I'm not a father, you are. So
Yep.
if we look historically over the last, say, let's make it 50 years.
Yep.
So how has patriarchal behaviours changed the landscape in regards to how we? I mean, you sort of mentioned it's the parents.
Oh.
What have fathers done
What's
differently
changed?
as time's gone on to make this the problem?
So the Industrial Revolution changed it all. Because before the Industrial Revolution, we had families at home in communities and all that stuff. And then the Industrial Revolution came and everyone went to work in factories.
Yeah,
And
at 13, kids had to work at 13.
at 13, right?
Go and get your
And
money.
it started then. And we really started down a bad way then. And so then advertising and marketing started in the 1930s and 40s. Which then made us try and strive for things that are external. Dads worked harder to try and get more money to get more things, and they were less present at home. We lost our tribal side of things. We lost our community. We lost those things. We became very insular and about ourselves, and we became competitive. And it was who's got the biggest dick wins.
Yeah.
And it became very much an outside viewpoint of what it means to be a man is success, but success in a way that was
started in the 80s, didn't it? The whole yuppie thing. That's what really took off. And I remember
greed is good. Greed is good.
What's his name? What's that guy's name?
Gecko. Gordon Gecko.
Yes. So
no, you're right. No, you are seriously right there. So back in I think Simon Sinek said this, right? So back in the 70s or early 80s, everything shifted from being a sort of a holistic perspective to a purely shareholder-driven perspective for major corporations, and it was all about shareholder value and shareholder, profits. So every business was driving to try and get as much money as possible, and it becomes revolving around this stuff, and all that sudden people are working longer hours, they're having kids, they're getting nannies, and I'm going to say something really bad here, and I'm going to say it's going to cop me all kinds of shit. I know it, but we have children, both parents work, and they send their kids to daycare and after school care every single day.
Yeah.
Now, their children have got more relationship with the daycare staff than they do as parents.
Yeah. I think you and I talked about this once before, right? In the 60s and 70s, there was child abuse. In the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, there was child neglect.
Correct.
Right? So it's still abuse, right?
Still abuse.
Yeah. Can I ask you, right? You know how everyone says they end up being like their own father, and they say, I don't want to be my father. I'm going to be different, and then they end up being like their father. How are you in that area? Like, how do you feel when you look at your own father and then you look at your own fatherhood?
I did everything opposite to my dad.
Yeah, and it's still with you now.
Yeah, Dad's still here, and look, my dad.
No. What I mean is that are you still doing the opposite now, or are you feeling that you're letting go of that to become?
Yeah. So my dad, he had when I was a teenager, he had cancer, and that was a pretty tough time, and there was things going on, and he didn't have a very good father. My grandfather came back from the Second World War, lost a leg, and became an alcoholic, and it's just a horrible experience. So my dad didn't have the best life at all. Grew up in poverty, and so his whole thing was, well, my children aren't going to experience what I experienced as a kid. So he worked his ass off to make sure that we were financially okay, which, God bless him, we were. But the problem with that is that you have an absent father.
Yeah.
And then I go through my, you go through your own stuff trying to find yourself, but your dad and they're not taught emotional intelligence. They're not, like you're saying, they repress your feelings, and this is what it means to man, and suck it up and all that kind of stuff. And so you do the best you can, but it's, for me, it was, this is what I'm not going to do. I will never ever.
Did you realize that quite young, quite early?
Oh yeah. It was, I'm not going to let my children feel the way that I feel.
Yeah. And what about the labeling? Like, do you remember I remember clearly, because I used to work in HR, when the whole dads could take paternal leave, right? And I remember everyone saying, oh my God, what is this? And so how do you feel fathers have been perceived as the time's gone on? Have they been seen as independent and they can have different roles? Do you think that's evolving?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that, the fatherhood these days with the right with the right backing and the right messaging behind it is such a powerful thing. And you see, all you have to do is look at statistics and look at families that don't have fathers present and look at what happens. And you and I see those clients every single day. I think you look in America at and again, I'm just pulling quotes out of my head, which I'm not entirely sure on, but I think, one of the states there, maybe in California or something like that, the fatherless ratio of Black Americans is something about 70%.
Mm.
And of that, the incarceration rate is through the roof.
Yeah. That's
because
there is podcast, I think. I could talk about I get so angry when I think about the whole law around, with Clinton and how he created that law that if someone stole a loaf of bread, it was like 15 years in jail and there's no parole. It's like, that was like a sort of, I feel like that was a created environment where they did create a whole culture, a whole community without fathers.
Oh, and the thing is, all you got to do is see children who have fathers who are present and good role models and kind and gentle and strong. You look at those children.
Yeah.
Now, you might have the odd anomaly here and there.
Well, you would have the anomaly where the father and mother stay together, but the father's an asshole and still is present, but he's still an asshole, right? But that's what therapy is all about. I mean, like, I don't think there's anyone that doesn't eventually need to be in therapy somewhere in life. Don't you think that everyone needs? Right? Well, I think that. Well, I've had therapy. Have you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think everyone has to address that part of themselves. As much as we love our parents, we have to understand that they have taught us so many right and wrong things, haven't they?
Yeah.
And we have to unpack that. So do you think about that when you're doing things and actually allowing yourself to be the parent with your children? Do you think about what am I doing that's wrong and what am I doing that's right? Or are you pretty open to the whole organic part of it all?
And it's funny because I think from the outside viewpoint, a lot of people would think that I'm undisciplined with my children, like and I probably am, is because I remember Charlotte when she was a bit young, she's probably about 2.5, when we've got a white kitchen and all that stuff, and she thought that one of the whiteboard markers and the kitchen was her canvas to draw all over.
Oh my God.
Now, two options there. I can either laugh at it or I can lose my shit. And you just see the beauty in what the child does. I mean, they've got no idea that wasn't what they were meant to do, and you've just got to step back and actually, think like a child sometimes, and see from their point of view. But it is hard because we're meant to be this role model, and we all make mistakes completely. And sometimes I yell at the kids, and I think, "Oh shit, what have I done that for?" I can see them just.
But it does go with what you said earlier, and that is, if you really see that wall that she drew on as being a thing, right? Because you said earlier that we get consumed with things, and I'm guessing that you've cleaned it up and it's gone now, right? It's fixed. Yeah. So I think people forget that things can get fixed.
Oh, absolutely.
They get fixated in punishing this child that has no idea what they've done wrong. When, in reality, the parent left the whiteboard marker out and, all these things gave that invitation for that. Correct. So, I mean, you're pretty aware of what you're going on. What do you say to your clients your male clients that don't get that? The clients that come in and they say, I'm angry because, the ones that go the opposite to what you did.
Yeah. Yeah. And you go strip it back. You got to strip right back to, why are you thinking this way? What's the trigger? She should know better. It's like, well, she's 4, she doesn't, and you got to really, really bring her back. But I can't solve a problem when a person's in fight or flight. So my first thing is to bring the client back to a normal emotional state or into a high vibration state. I cannot work with them if they're in the angry and fighting and unhappy and problem-focused area, because there is no solution there. Yeah. So it's strip it all back.
They're in the ego in a way, aren't they?
Nothing going to happen, right? Yeah. It's just going to be me talking to a blank wall, and they're going to go away and I'll pay Greg this money and nothing's happening. It's like, well, dude, it ain't going to happen because you're in this mindset. So the first thing is to strip them right back and just bring them back to a equilibrium, and then raise their vibration a bit, and then go, okay, well, let's look at this. And then when they've raised their vibration up and they can see it from a different perspective, they don't see the problem. It doesn't exist.
Right.
And they see a solution to it. And then they see, maybe I should put the whiteboard markers away next time. Or maybe they see the beauty in the child going, wow, look, maybe if I got into Charlotte's mind and thought what she was thinking, and I can just sit there and go, wow, I'm just having this great time drawing all over the kitchen table. What a great thing to do.
Yeah. And, yelling at Charlotte may have got her to actually not draw ever again.
Absolutely.
That's the thing that people forget is, we know from shadow work that one little thing at that early age can create a shadow that automatically shuts that down, which is, the next question I'm going to ask, Greg, is not a right or wrong question, okay? So please, listeners, do not persecute me. Do you believe that there is a way more advantage to men that got children versus men that don't, in regards to understand? Okay, bang, bang.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I haven't got children, so I am the face of all the childrenless men, and you're the face of the fathers. So tell me what the difference is then in your eyes.
The understanding of a man when he rocks up and his eyes are bagging out of his head because he's had with his wife a total of 4 hours sleep over 3 days. The kids have been sick. They're screaming. You've got a newborn baby. And you're just saying, just suck it up. It's like, dude, I can't keep my fucking eyes open. I can't do shit. I'm at my wit's end. I've got 2 other kids screaming their heads off. I got one who won't do this. Baby crying. Got to feed this. Wife's having a meltdown. How do I get through this? And so I think there definitely is.
What happens to you then? Where do you go?
Oh, from there, it just.
I mean, in that scenario, where do you go as a man? Do you just, I'm listening to you and I'm going, thank God I've got no children. But, you're telling me that this is a great thing. So where do you go? Do you feel like that melts you into a family community feeling rather than being selfish? It's not about you anymore. It's about them.
It's never about you. I mean, I was speaking to someone the other day and I was talking about this with a client and I said, actually, when your children are sick, it's one of the greatest experiences you can have because you're bonding. And I remember, again, Charlotte's my teacher in my life, right? So I remember, she was throwing up and throwing up and throwing up, and I took her in the shower for probably the 5th time that night, and changing her sheets, and she was kept throwing up, and I'm sitting there and I'm in the shower, she's on me, and spew's just running down me, and the shower's running down me, and she's just crying, and I'm sitting there and I'm crying as well too because I'm thinking this was the most beautiful experience I could have.
Wow.
With this child.
I've never thought of it that way. You've sort of
So
why do you think that like me, other men, like, are you able to see that we could find an equal version of that, or do you think that men that don't have children, they miss out on something that we'll never be able to understand because you can't explain it in a physical, emotional way?
Yeah, I mean, and I think we kind of get stuck on this thing about, well, you don't have kids, you're not as good as this other person. They're just different experiences, okay? Yeah. They're just different things. I'm not better than you or you're not better than me. They're just different experiences. And can you have rapport with somebody that's been in that situation as well as I can? Probably not. But does that mean you can't coach them as well as me? No.
Yeah. Okay. I was more thinking about some of the deficiencies that we're experiencing at the moment with the way that men see things. Like, that part of that, you have this really beautiful way of seeing things. And I think you brought something up earlier that is very important. That is, we need to speak, we need to share, we need to have the hierarchy, right? Because how will someone learn if they don't have a father? How will they learn things? These things are important. So yeah, do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if it's the missing link. This is why we're bringing up men in these days with just a lack of idea about anything, and especially with my psychic stuff. 90% of my clientele's female, and I hear every single day about how bad their husband or boyfriend, or I can't find the right man, or something like this to treat them, and so it's just one of those things where it's the missing link, it's the missing gap. That if fathers would actually sit down and have conversations with their teenage boys, conversations with their teenage girls, and sit there and show real interest in them, and to be by their side and support them, and to treat them as a young adult, not as a child. And what I find is what a lot of fathers or parents do, they treat their teenagers like children.
Mm.
Now, a teenager's job is to push every fucking button you've got, to push every boundary, because you and I, we did this shit, didn't we?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. It's like, it's our job. Well, that's what learning who you are is all about. If you don't push the boundary, then you end up being a model, a cookie cutter version of what your parents want you to be. Then you have another version of, unhappiness in your life later.
And our job as those elders is to sit there and hold space and hold them that safety net, and to hold them in that space of, it's okay to fail, it's okay to stuff up, it's okay to not want to be this or not do that. And we lack that because our attention spans as parents is so short these days. We don't put the effort and time into actually sitting down with our kids and having.
What about the other side of that? Do you think there's way too much information that confuses people? You know how, like, nowadays, right? If there's every day I see that there's a new version of what you should do. So 1 minute we do this, 1 minute we do that. So if I was a parent and didn't have your smarts, I would be confused as hell.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's the problem. There's so much information out there.
Who do we believe? What do we believe then?
Well, exactly. I mean, you can only watch so much Dr. Phil on a weekday, right? So, and it also goes. There's the thing is, like we were talking, the other week about when you're having a spiritual awakening. The same thing. Where do you go to? Who do you follow? What's right, what's not right. It's again, there's so much information out there.
You got to follow your gut as a parent, then, don't you?
But with parenting,
sort of combine as a team. I guess you got to work with your wife or partner and just see the pathway rather than,
And as parents, you're going to bugger some shit up too. So it's to be vulnerable and compassionate and empathy with both of you guys, to sit there and go, well, I'm going to stuff some things up royally as a parent as well too. So it's that. But parenting is actually very, very simple, the base thing: presence, communication, love, safety. It's not hard.
Yeah.
Basic things.
You know what? I got to speed it up because you and I have already gone over half an hour. We're already established that this podcast will go for an hour, so I apologize to everyone. So masculinity, right? I know that it could be different things, but do you feel that masculinity is more derivative of how we have relationships with other men, or is masculinity more derivative about how we behave with women? I know it could be both. But which one's more powerful? Are men trying to be masculine for women, or are men being more masculine so they get fit in with other men?
No, the women's stuff, because we're still biologically have our animalistic instincts inside of us. Is that our tribe or our basic instinct is to procreate and to be that thing that the leader of the tribe and stuff like that. And women have this base need, and again, it's going to be controversial, to pick the
we're talking about reality, history, and what our brain is made up of. But so you're saying that primarily we are trying to impress someone rather than fit into a brotherhood.
Correct. If we fit into a brotherhood, so much would change.
I know, but see, the thing is that I'm listening to what you just said, but I think my mind's going to the football club and the whole behavioural thing that to me is like a tribe, and they all become this masculine freaking energy pumping specimen of people. So is that, are they then utilising that behaviour to then pick up women, or are they really trying to be part of the team? It is. I know that there's a right answer for all of this, but it's just interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. So I played footy for 30 odd years, and
was it masculine culture there?
Oh, fucking horrible culture. Some places just horrible.
Yeah.
Some places were magnificent. It all depends on who's in charge. But I would say brotherhood is a word you can't use for a footy club, because there's so much alcoholism,
sexism,
misogynist
adultery
stuff, sexism. It was who could pick up the trainer the quickest. It was horrible experience, and for some people, but some places are really good. But a brotherhood for me is a whole different place. A brotherhood is an open, honest place. So I wouldn't necessarily use footy clubs and the word brotherhood in the name.
Okay, thank you. So can we just go, just for clarification, why do you think, you were saying over and over again it was horrible, why do you think you didn't make them accountable for that? Why do people not talk up in that environment?
Because you're trying to fit in.
Yeah, okay. So it is interesting that you just, I think that you've just sort of said that it's both areas. I think there's two types of masculinity. One is to fit into the connection with other men, and men then use their masculinity to get into the prowess with women or with a sexual partner.
Or men. Yeah, or other men.
Yeah. Well, it's a sexual energy. So I'll ask you the last question, because I know that I want to definitely stay under an hour. Is that, how do we take that information and now teach men about consent? Consent is a big problem, right?
Good question.
So how are we going to solve the consent problem in our world?
Let me throw a curveball at you.
What?
So I know a group of Year 9 girls who have got a girl code going of who to bed first in Year 9. So
you're saying that now it's girls and guys are both doing it? Yeah, okay. I mean, let me add another curveball to it. But so in the gay world, you don't need consent. You just do it. So you've got men that are just, men are just using their sexual prowess in the gay world or the LGBTQI world, and just acknowledging that if there's an energy, you just do it, right? Then you've got these other layers, right? And now it's interesting because I watched the 60 Minutes report on consent, and they didn't really talk about the female version, which you're now bringing up. So are you saying that consent now is a confusing, blurred thing for everyone?
Yes or no. There's basic consent that it comes down to who you are as a male and what you stand for from a value perspective. And because there's so much alcohol and drugs that are involved, it becomes very blurred. And as soon as you get alcohol and drugs involved, what may have been a yes before you started drinking turns into a no because you've lost control. But the problem is both people have lost control as well too. Yeah. So it becomes completely blurred. But if the man had realized that, and this is where it comes back to, it's such a blurred thing because, and again, I've heard stories, the fact that it was yes while they were drunk, but then she changed her mind afterwards because she was getting ribbed by her girlfriends because she slept with this guy. So she changed it to no, and this dude's up on rape charges.
Yeah.
So it's all a blurred line, right?
Well, I know. Like, let's just confine it to, I guess, more about, I guess, the confusion of. I think it goes back to what you said about parenting. I think because the thing that I was watching was all about teenagers, and what happened was when they broke it down, no one, the males and the females, didn't know how to define rape. They thought rape was when someone that they didn't know attacked them. They didn't consider rape being that your friend could do it at a party. So they were all saying, we're confused. We don't really know what we call this, right? And so, but, do you think it is the parenting thing where they're not talking openly and schools aren't being honest? Yeah,
because I know, especially with my kids, is that, and Oscar's, our third child, I'll be drumming into him that a girl, and if you guys are drunk, don't. It just doesn't happen, right? Because it's just a place you don't want to go down to, and having for me, and this is again me on my high horse, having sex is a spiritual connection. It's And
I was going to actually say to you that's the thing I think is lacking, is that there seems to be this desperation. That's why the whole footy club thing. That's the whole thing with being a teenage boy. If we remove the desperation, then a boy can see that girl doesn't want to. She said no. I'm not desperate enough to have. I don't know. Is that me getting on my horse? do you sort of understand that the desperation part can be removed as a man?
Yeah, I think as men, as leaders, we're the ones who are meant to lead this stuff about consent and go, no, you've had too many drinks. This ain't going to happen. And that comes, like you said, back to parenting and values. And for us to go, let me keep my dick in my pants, even though I would love to do this. But I know that as a man, I need you to respect me. And this ain't going to be.
Yeah, I really want that. See, I would love it if the media, the TV, the movies removed that part of it, because that whole thing about, I've never ever in my life, I don't know if you have ever gone, oh, my balls hurt, I need to have sex with you. The whole thing. You know the whole thing that they do in movies? The kids are watching that and thinking, no, she said, yes, I need to do it because I'm going to be in pain. I think that there needs to be a bit of an openness to the fact that you're not going to die. It'll happen tomorrow or another day. But right now, you don't have to be desperate, because I've heard of boys getting no from one girl and then going to another girl and the same night. Like there's this urgency, and I don't know if that's because their libido is all chemical because they're only young.
Yeah,
and I don't know if that's what they need to do. I don't know.
But also, these days, porn is such a massive issue with teenage boys, and the lack of respect shown to women in those videos is horrendous. And that's borderline. A lot of it is borderline abuse, if not, it actually is abuse. That they just think that this is normal. That pushing a girl's head into a pillow and doing a doggy style while your mate looks on is part of what guys just do, right? And that's part of the problem too. Is that there's so much shit out there that is just horrible. And again, people may like watching porn. Go for your life. Don't give a shit. But if you've got a young teenage, son, and that's all he's watching, guess what he's going to do to his first girlfriend?
That means that fathers need to tell their sons that it's fantasy, like you just said. Because what they said on the 60 Minutes report, what happened at the 60 Minutes report was this guy took a drunk girl upstairs, having sex with her. Friends walked in. He stopped, pulled up his pants, went downstairs. She started crying. She was come to. The two friends were taking her home. And when they walked into the lounge room, everyone booed them, girls and guys, because the guy didn't come.
Yeah.
So, that whole thing, there's this whole ideology of how things should play out, and when they don't work out that way, you've done something to break that. And I think that's part of this whole, I think the hierarchy thing is a great idea. I think
and that's where it comes down. Comes down to teaching from an elder perspective about respect.
How do we do this now? How do we start creating this new
complete conversation about this is what it means to be a man today. This is the respect you need to have, and to have sex with a female. Because what's happening is that, she's allowing, and I'm going to come to tangent again. When I do coaching for males who are single wanting to get back into the game, I say to these guys, if I find out you've had sex with a girl within 6 days, you're out of my. I'm dumping you, right? Because it means you've just tried to bed her. You should be doing everything in your power to court this girl and prove to her that her prize, which is her, worth giving away.
But what if the girl wants to be bedded on the first date?
No.
Because that's the whole thing that's going on now. It's about swiping and just getting into sex and all that.
But and again, this goes back to me being very old school about what works from a long-standing relationship perspective. Statistically, what works from a perspective of the longer term that creates long-standing relationships that are committed and depth-based and spiritually based. It's not banging each other on the first date. So for me, it goes back, but it goes back to that absolute hierarchy to go. How do you want to treat another human being, and what do you need to do as a male to show respect for? We need a whole shift of perspective about and again, like I said at the start, these are just viewpoints, but you and I see the destruction at the front end as to what happens.
We also acknowledge that we need to talk about it. Like that's the important thing. And you're very clever, my friend. You always end the show in a way that wants more. We want more. I'm already thinking about how am I going to get him back on? Because you can see how this is and I think you and I talked about having a series of conversations, and maybe that's what we do. Because these questions really, for me, I needed to ask someone these questions, and it's good to hear your perspective. So thank you so much. I need to end it there, but we will be back. So thank you for your time and for your honesty. And I promise you, no one will say anything terrible, because we don't allow that. We want people to be open to the fact that everyone has different perspectives. Because how can you see the gold if you can't see the dark? We need to see both sides.
Yeah, and again, it's a perspective thing, and look, we're here to create conversation, and you and I, we know some people don't disagree with this, and that's part of the conversation. And I'll probably learn something through some other people having disagreement with me, and that's the beauty of it, is that. Quite often I'll have a chat with somebody. Oh, I didn't see it that way. Let me just.
But that's beautiful. We want people to do that. I just want people listening to stop being defensive. Because as soon as you get defensive, what happens is that you stop listening to the other side. Right. We're not going to move forward if we don't see and understand both sides with love and compassion and not judging.
Right.
So
Yep.
thank you, my friend. Thank you for such a great show. An
Pleasure.
hour, everyone. We've made an hour. This has only happened twice before, and it's been with this gentleman here. All right.
Joey.
See you next time.
Thanks,
You've been listening to the Secret Men's Business podcast, so don't forget podcasts are out on Monday, brand new ones. This will be out on a Monday, and we're doing retro podcasts on Thursday. So get to listen to podcasts from the past. So have a great week, everyone. Be kind to one another, and we'll see you soon. Bye.